Rune wasn't actually curious, but just programmed to be pleasantly interested. However, Phil767 knew that if he were to lower his guard and include Rune in on his find, that would alert the system. All Asimas, like the cameras, are connected directly to the system. Phil767 thought quickly and discreetly, kicked loose dirt over the find. "Rune, turn around. You seem to be lagging in your responses," he said, pretending to be concerned. Not so much for Rune, but for the system that could be listening to every word of the conversation. He didn't want to use any words that could arouse further suspicion, like anything that might refer to found technology from the 21st century. Phil767 pulled Rune's shirt collar down to reveal a small access panel. He popped the panel open to see that there was absolutely nothing wrong. Phil767 said. "Sir?" "Yeah, you better go in and shut down. There seems to be... Well, go to your station so I can figure out what's causing the problem. I may also want to modify your personality programming. I do not mean to be contrary, but I do not seem to have any functional issues, Phil767. Yeah, you've been running kind of slow today. Something's off. You better go shut down before it gets worse. I can look at it later. That will be all, Rune. Thanks. You do not need any further assistance. My levels seem to register well in the adequate range, and Nope, I'll be cleaning up soon. Thanks." "Good afternoon, Phil767, Rune replied as he turned and headed for the side entrance of the house. Phil767 just stood there, with his hands on his hips, looking down at the garden. He scratched his head with his right hand as he casually glanced over to where he'd hit that shiny object, as if he were contemplating the next step of the project. He was thinking all the while that he had to act as though nothing out of the ordinary had happened, as though nothing had been found. Just the thought of cameras watching him was like the sun beating down on the back of his neck. A bead of sweat rolled down his forehead and into his left eye. Again, he was concentrating on every move, rubbing his left hand into a burning eye as his head tipped once more to view and ponder what was in the hole. He was frozen in contemplation. Phil767 had a pretty good idea what he had found. That was exactly why he felt the way he did. He battled with what he should do, and what he wanted to do. He considered the path he had started down with his most recent decisions. His mind was racing. He questioned everything he had done and was doing. Did it seem too suspicious to send Rune to shut down? His actions were being viewed by that camera, mounted on the back of his house. Did he trigger a response by the system to monitor him via satellite for strange behavior? Did Rune detect what he deemed as suspicious, and, if so, what would he do? Were the neighbors watching? Maybe he should have had Rune at least put the tools back in the shed. It seemed illogical that he wouldn't have. Time seemed to have slowed down as Phil767's calm outward appearance disguised his panicked inside. Phil767's halo rang and vibrated. His heart leapt into his throat as he was about to answer his halo. He anticipated that it was a message from the system. He imagined, as time seemingly slowed, that he would be ordered to remain in his home until the proper authorities arrived. Or perhaps Rune would come back out of the house and secure him until he could be detained for questioning. The halo rang again as Phil767 reluctantly raised his hand into view. His expression quickly changed. It was Beta. "What?" Phil767 said, sounding both irritated and relieved at the same time. "Dante, we have come to a concession," Beta said authoritatively. Phil767 rolled his eyes. "Even though you haven't contributed to our discussion of this matter, upon your confirmation of this message, you can return to your rightful level in Weltherrschaft. They will remove the spurs because you were distracted, but Kaina remains free until someone finds her. The gaming session is scheduled to continue at 3 p.m. today. Does this sound acceptable to you, Dante?" "But," Phil767 glanced down at the hole, "I think that the inconsequential interruption, however inappropriate, is to some degree responsible for my situation. I actually think that the spurs should remain," Phil767 said, trying to get off the halo. "Are you going to be joining us at 3 o'clock, or should we play on without you?" Beta asked, somewhat confused. I don't know, Beta. I gotta go. My, Mom wants me to do some planting and stuff, you know? Got to go. Bye. Wait, Dante, I will relay your situation and concerns to the council, Beta said, now fully back in character. Perhaps Thala would be a more appropriate name for you to consider, Dante. Whatever, Beta. I gotta go. Bye. Phil767 hung up the halo. His attention shifted back to the hole he'd started digging. He began to question his own actions. But he had to do something. Yes, he thought. I have a plan. He threw both of his hands up to his forehead and ran his fingers through his hair, as if he were exhausted and frustrated all at the same time. Okay, he said, sounding exasperated. Then he piled up the remaining plants at the end of the soon-to-be garden, where the wormwood will go, to cover that suspicious find. I hope you enjoyed this sample of Phil767, the Reluctant Luminary. Find out what happens next. Follow for more content and click on the link below, phil767.com. Thank you for listening.